esophagus.
All right, I am.
Something like
I
that.
am live now. So I have my screen. I have my screen up. Did you see what I did last time? Did you ever get a chance to look at the?
I watched like the first minute, so I didn't catch much. I know you like popped up your screen for each game on the top 10.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see those. Never mind. But I knew you were doing it.
Yeah, I won't have that this time, but I figure we'll be fine.
That's a nice rhyme.
I'm a poet and I don't even know it.
Yeah.
So, hello out there,
So
all
your-
you
so your
wonderful
video is
people.
Still live.
Yeah, my
Chris,
video
your
is still
video
live.
still live. Oh, cool. Did you ever put our bios on the webpage?
I keep forgetting. I even heard it today when I was editing the thing.
You're slacking on Slack.
Ah.
Because that's where I gave you my bio.
Oh, show notes. That would be
Did I tell you?
That would be good to have.
So earlier today, this evening, I went into the bedroom and Seabass looked all adorable laying on the bed. And I was like, oh, I'm going to snuggle with you. And then he farted. It smelled horrible.
That's great.
So I had to get up because it was awful.
Okay, I'm just going to be looking at 146 because I don't have time to put in the news yet.
All right. I pulled up Mod Crush on the computer.
Oh, sweet. Can you type into it?
All right. You want to try hitting something just on the soundboard just so we know it still works? Okay, just checking. Okay, I am finally set up and ready.
I am good to go.
You guys give me about 45 minutes. I'll be right back.
What are you driving down here?
Yeah, I gotta run some errands real quick. Just be a minute.
A minute or 45? You're throwing me off here.
Yeah, time is relative, so it's...
You see how your story is full of horror.
You forgot the S, Colin.
Full of whores? Is that what you just said?
She interrupted me. I was thinking. I was trying to type in swords and full of holes. You see how your story is full of it's full of holes.
Welcome to Board and Sword, where we talk about one RPG and one board game.
But the board game better not have swords in it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You forgot chat.
I know. I'm changing it. Don't want to be streaming the video, so it messes with this stuff.
So, don't know if anybody's in the chat, but good evening, morning, wherever you are. Just Colin. Colin's in there. Hi, Colin.
I'm everywhere.
Hi, Colin.
And yet you're nowhere.
Hey, we got somebody.
Yay.
Voila, baby.
Anyways, I am ready to go if you guys all are.
Yep.
Okay. We ready to kick this pig?
Well, let me just retweet this.
No kicking of pigs.
Come on by. All right.
If it doesn't bother you.
No, I'm good.
Let's do this thing.
Okay. Start the show in 3, 2, 1. Thanks to all our patrons for helping make this episode possible. Make sure to go to patreon.com/boardsandswords to learn more on how you can help. Live from Swordplay Studios, it's time for Boards and Swords.
Woo! Oh, yeah!
Yeah! Hey, sorry, that was me ducking down to lower my volume. It's time for Boards and Swords. This is the confounded conglomeration of a bunch of words that forms a podcast talking about board games and having fun with it. I am one of your hosts. My name is Chris Renshaw, and Philip is not here, but we do have Colin and Cindy.
Hello.
Hey.
And we got a special guest with us. We have Matthew Hocker.
Hey there, pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
So, Matt, why don't you tell us why you're important?
I think we're all important, Chris. I don't know if I'm necessarily important. I think we're all, on the same level. But I guess board game wise, I recently kickstarted, fulfilled, and published a game called Composition, which is a word building game.
See, that was all. I was wanting to know what's your important thing.
Right. Fair enough.
So, yep, he's going to be here. We're talking about, just kind of wanted to get Matt's perspective today a little later on, talking about indie games and kind of that development process. And also kind of, I thought it might be interesting, especially with everything going on in the world right now, just to kind of get a smaller perspective on what it might be like during these times. So, but first, how is everybody going? How's everybody doing? Any big games going on?
Big games.
What just game? Any big gaming going on? There you go.
Well, Matt and I actually played a game of Lost Cities earlier today on Tabletop Simulator.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. A big game being played by most people is probably Tabletop Simulator, which is games in a way.
Yeah, I tried out Gloomhaven on Tabletop Simulator with my friend Sean up in Canada.
How did you like it?
It's fun. Yeah, it's definitely Gloomhaven's one of those that I'm finding more and more. The game is rougher the less digital stuff you use. Because like when I'm playing it here in the house, I've gotten to the point there's a helper app that kind of flips a lot of the enemy cards for you, which really helps if there's multiple different kinds of enemies. And then of course, if you've got the Tabletop Simulator version, there's a lot of it's taking care of everything. And it makes it a lot more enjoyable, and you're less fiddling around with mechanics.
Nice. And I'm officially verified in Steam now because I went ahead and bought Viticulture for Tabletop Simulator.
Ooh.
Yeah, I told him to.
She said, do it. Because you have to spend like $5 on Steam to be verified. And
look at you.
Tabletop Sim. I had bought Tabletop Simulator through a third party through Fanatical, and so I was like, man,
look at you spending your first $5 on Steam. Isn't that cute?
Yeah,
that's the gateway that opens it up. It won't stop now. You're gonna keep going.
Oh man, I got to talk about Arkham Horror. Oh god. So we are getting to the end. We've been playing a campaign, The Path to Carcosa, which a lot of people are saying is one of the best campaigns they've done for the LCG, and it's so crazy the kinds of things they do. And we got to the penultimate episode 7 out of 8, and we ran it not this Monday, but the Monday before last, and managed to where it was a grind, but managed to get our way through it. And then we were getting right towards the end, and someone's like, hey, Chris, you should go take out this thing. And I'm like, no, we need to really worry about this other thing. I think we've got a turn before we really need to worry about that first thing. And sure enough, that first thing ended up killing us. And it was just all because of a decision I made. And not only that, because of the way we ended up getting all the way through the agenda deck to where it goes, oh, yeah, because you're towards the end of the campaign, we're just going to say that, you guys are devoured and everybody in the world goes crazy now.
I'll just say I love the spoiler tags you put in there.
Well, I didn't really say much besides.
I know. It's like he said, "Oh, you should do this thing." I'm like, we should do that thing.
Yeah. So now we
It's
have
like,
to.
no, I'm talking about the BGG spoiler tag where you don't see anything.
Oh, right. Yeah. So we have to go replay the whole thing so that we can play the final scenario.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because of its stupid decision I made. Oh well. I'm not taking it personal or anything, obviously.
Well, hey, at least you get more Arkham Horror card game.
No, I know. It's just like one of those ba-da-ba-ba-ba, that's Arkham Horror.
Yeah,
Is that the sound that plays when you open the box?
No, that's just the sound that goes through my head anytime that it decides to be Arkham Horror.
Yeah, we started doing an around the world series of Ticket to Ride, kind of.
We're playing through all of our maps.
Yeah, we just decided.
Oh,
it's been a while since we played the maps, so
you should get a globe and then just spin it and do the whole spin it and put your finger in a place and then play that map.
We could. There's getting enough maps to where you could. We don't have the newest one yet, but
you just keep spinning until you land on something that you can play. So
let's see.
But,
all the big places
are
covered.
Just go in order of release
that's no fun.
But it is. Because what if we have to play like Germany like 3 times in a row?
Well, then good for you.
The Germans have won.
Oh man, let's go into some news. How about that?
Okay.
I know things are weird right now, but I couldn't go another episode without doing some news.
Yeah,
we mentioned
Fantastic.
Yeah, we mentioned Frosthaven last time, but this time we now have the other big game I was looking forward to. CMON has launched the 3rd part of their big legendary saga, which is Ankh. It's now live. Ankh.
Sounds like cavemen.
It sounds like a German lesson.
Nah. So the way the game works is you take the form of ancient gods of Egypt, looking to build up their following more than the other players. It's really weird because if you play with like 4 to 5 people, once you get to like the 3rd phase of the game, the people that are in last place now become like a single unified god that win or lose together. Yeah, it's really interesting. I tried to avoid backing it, but in the end the game was just like, come on.
It was okay.
Speaking of come on, their trading was suspended earlier this week as like several big things kind of came to light. I'm not even going to pretend to understand any of it because it's all businessy and financial world stuff. I've got links that'll be in the show notes that has both the original post that I pulled from from ICV2 that talks about their trading being suspended, and then I've also got the post that has CMON's response to that about everybody freaking out. But it has something to do with the way that they track Kickstarter monies to where they show it as like an asset and a liability until the game ships, and then it's no longer a liability because now the customer has it, but the assets are slowly getting drained as they spend money, so then there's a weird error thing there.
Huh.
That's the way that CMON explained it, so I'm sure there's probably a lot more better takes on it. Just want to put the links out there. But when asked if these concerns were valid, the company responded, come on.
Was that supposed to be its own joke?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
You're not gonna like the rest of these. I'm just gonna tell you that right now.
I mean, it was just the same joke twice. It sounded like, so
yeah.
I wasn't sure.
So, anyways, Condescending, you can tune out for a little bit because we're gonna have a couple of FFG stories now. Hey, I'm only allowed like 5 stories, so it's gonna be stuff that I like. I have to make jokes on it.
I'm just teasing you.
So, taking a page from Marvel Champions, FFG announced that they're going to be doing 5 new investigators for the Arkham Horror card game, but unlike the way they've done them in the past, each investigator is going to have its own uniquely playable deck that you could buy separately. So if you've got friends that play Arkham Horror, the card game, and you want to play, you could just walk into the store, pick up one of these packs, open it, and then start playing.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. It allows new players a very easy way to jump into their friends. So, that wasn't the end point.
It sounded like a joke.
It did?
It allows their friends to jump into their friends. I was like, that sounds like his
Oh.
jokes.
I think anything with those kinds of horns after it becomes a joke automatically.
Now you have something to live up to.
I'm not even going to finish the... No, you're just...
Please do.
Speaking of Marvel Champions, I'm moving on. At the
Wait,
game...
Marvel Champions, where'd that come in?
Because I talked
'Cause
about
he
the taking
referenced
taking a page, because Marvel Champions sells individual
Oh,
decks.
Yeah. Got it.
At the Game and Trade show, before everything was shut down, FFG announced that their first big campaign box that everybody was looking forward to is going to be called Rise of the Red Skull. So it's going to add a campaign mode to the game, which is one of the biggest cons that people have had against, pros and cons against the game. And so it's not as very narrative, which I find okay, but regardless. It's also going to add 2 new heroes, Hawkeye and Spider-Woman, and 5 new villains that you can play as well. So, originally this was supposed to release this summer, but at the show, FFG said that the box will be coming much later in 2020. So, cue all the fans online going, come on. So you can figure out, fill in the blank yourself, what the Arkham Horror one was. So, anyways,
So was that a joke?
that was supposed to be a joke.
Man, you're just
The
I'm
joke was
totally
I was
off.
using the same joke 4 times in a row.
Lame. Just kidding.
Anyways, hi Grandma, I'm doing fine.
I just texted Colin because he looked at the screen. I was like, "That's Chris's grandma."
All right, last piece. Gamma announced that they're pushing back Origins this year. It's going to be October 7th through the 11th, the big
Nice, I love
gaming convention in Columbus, Ohio. So what are they going to be doing during the June weekend, though? The Origins usually is. During that weekend, which is June 19th through the 21st, they're going to be hosting an online convention called Origins Online. It's going to have seminars, an online exhibit hall where you can demo new games and buy stuff from companies, etc. Hey, everybody know what a disaster it is every year getting into housing at Gen Con? Now I want you to take that image and then picture Gamma running it. Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Got him!
You don't always have to punctuate
Got it.
everyone. You know that, right?
I missed a couple.
The fact that it's just Gamma's a joke in and of itself. So
Yeah, my buttons have quite a delay, so that's why I kind of have to anticipate the joke, and so that's why I
So why is Gamma holding the online thing?
well, because Gamma runs Origins,
Oh, do they? I
Yeah.
did not know that.
which is why from what I've heard from the retailer and anybody that exhibits anything at Origins, it's such a crapshoot. So, what was that?
Thing. Just people
Uh-oh.
that it's
A lot-
to Origin or anybody.
Lost you there for a second.
Can you hear us now?
You're very robot-y.
Why?
You're coming back, sort of.
How about now?
Hold
How
on.
about now? Can you hear us now?
Yes.
There it is.
Does it save your recordings? Okay.
So, what was the problem?
I don't know. It just had a blip.
Okay.
Classic internet
So-
stuff.
So what I was asking, who is going to be allowed to this online thing? Is it just going to be the people that have tickets to Origins, or is it going to be open to everybody?
I have no idea.
Okay. Because if it was open to everybody, holy cow, I could imagine that would be a crazy disaster.
Yep, that was what I was figuring.
Need a
So
code.
I'm just here we go. Online, let's see. It will be hosting for tabletop gaming fans to join from their devices. They make it sound like it's for everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a nightmare.
Which I mean, hosting
Maybe. I
like
don't
all the gaming pieces and like seminars, that'll be fine, because those will be hosted on other sites probably. It's just the integration of everything, like what they're like, how you find all these like webinars and stuff. That's going to be the problem, and whatever they're talking about for an online exhibit hall is probably going to be atrocious.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's all I can imagine.
I'm curious.
Are
Find
you?
out.
Well, honestly, either way, this is going to be, in my opinion, I think no matter how it ends up being, it's going to be a relatively good thing. I think you're going to see a lot of conventions and areas like that sort of Origins falls into start going through in a more online-oriented structure or infrastructure.
Yeah.
As we kind of keep moving forward, even after this all goes away. I think that this is sort of like almost a play test, so to speak, of whether or not this is feasible and if it's lucrative. Because even if it's not amazing, if it does okay,
Yeah.
that's still going to be very good. Because just imagine, you don't have to pay rent for using the location. It saves them a ton of money as a convention host space. They already have the branding, and now they'll have an online space that delivers traffic. And people like me who want to get a game out there or content out there will still spend a lot of money, so you're at the top of the page. So if this is like a focus point over the span of 1 to 3 days, or even if you're going there for a minute, whatever you see at the top of the screen is extremely valuable advertising space.
Which is why it's going to live and die on its implementation. Like having something that's usable and not, going to be a disaster. And that's why I'm feeling like trusting Gamma with something like that is going to be...
I would agree. My concern is mostly for smaller gaming companies or independent publishers that really can't compete with larger, conventions are really nice because even if you're not at the front of the room, you're still on equal footing because a lot of people are going to be traveling around. Like you said, if the infrastructure online isn't there, you may just go unnoticed. Like no one's going to want to go to your page. Like you may not exist unless you have some amazing way to show yourself off.
On the flip side, it means that you're not investing as much money as you would be going to a convention.
I'm not sure what their prices are though for their online infrastructure, so I wouldn't be able to answer that one way or the other. But
I don't think they know yet either. I think this is somebody like, this is a great idea, put it out, and now they're like, crap, how do we do this?
Maybe, yeah.
Like if this was like a Gen Con online kind of situation, I would have a little bit more faith in it.
Not to mention the server load that's going to be taking place over the course of those days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm really worried about. Speaking of which, I'm just worried about things like I've been talking with our groups and stuff, and nobody's making any decisions yet because we're still so far out. But I'm even very hesitant towards, even if Gen Con is a thing this year, like let's just assume everything, like we're not social isolating anymore, that we flatten the curve enough that by Gen Con time we're at least out and about, and Gen Con goes on as promised, I don't know if I'm going. Because that's like we won't, there's no way we have a vaccine by then. And you're talking about you and 60,000 of your best friends. All it takes is one of those 60,000 to have the disease or not, to have the virus or to be a carrier, and now everybody's toast.
Right, because it's such a
because you're just so
it's so contagious.
It's so contagious. You're also in the same cramped space, recirculating the same air.
Yeah.
So
I imagine a lot of these conventions are not going to really be up and running at some normal function until 2021, and even then, some folks believe that COVID-19 will probably repeat itself in some way annually, similar to other flu viruses.
Right.
Tricky stuff.
Yeah. And then plus the flip side of this, and I mean, this is, I don't know if you've looked, Matt, if you've looked into stuff at Gen Con, but from as I hear it, Gen Con is expensive from a company to go to. And so there's a lot of companies that have been saying that even if there is a Gen Con, they may not go because they won't have new product because everything's been shut down.
Right.
And if a company doesn't have product, it's so expensive, it's not worth going because you're not going to make up those sales on just your back catalog.
Conventions are extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's worth repeating. They're extraordinarily expensive. When you go to a convention, especially as a company, there has to be some level. Well, there's going to be a level of uncertainty unless you've been in the business for a while, where you have no idea if it's going to be lucrative. I would say, generally speaking, for independent publishers, when you go into this, and most startup companies in general, most companies that start up aren't lucrative immediately.
Right.
They tend to lose money. When I go to a convention, I have no guarantee if my game will be a success unless I just have some explosive online power. And even then, that can be a bit of a gamble. Most of the time, conventions are extraordinarily useful for independent publishers to get eyes on their product, to build a catalog of people that enjoy their game, that they want to reach out to later on, to make connections, that sort of thing, to get the game in front of people to try. And then after that, you kind of start moving ahead as you go through the convention circuit. People talk about it online at places like Board Game Geek and spread news through Facebook groups such as yours or on Twitter, so on and so forth. So regarding the financial viability of conventions, that is obviously something companies will look at, but there's short-term investment and long-term investment. Companies like me, like if a larger company drops out of something like Gen Con, and there's going to be a gamble assessment, there's going to be or a risk assessment rather, like you said, so there's the potential for flu virus to spread. But if that does drop out, I may want, or a smaller company might want to inject themselves into that environment, because that might be one of the few opportunities they have to get into that environment. So I think a lot of companies are really looking at risk versus opportunity, and what's too much risk, what's too much, how do you assess that? And I personally don't know, because there's so many unknown factors to this.
Right.
Still.
And that's why, nobody really knows until we get a lot closer, but it's just thoughts I've been having and chatting about with people. Because, and I have to, there's like some of my friends are like, well, I'll just take extra precautions, use extra hand sanitizer, I'll wear a mask, yada, yada. But at the same time, I'm not so much worried. It comes down to your individual situation where it's like, I'm not worried about myself, but I have a wife who has asthma and a lot of, what's the word? Who has just various health issues that make her high risk, to where if it were just me and I was, living in a bubble, I would probably not care as much, but I have that piece to worrying about bringing something home.
Ultimately, in an environment like this, we're responsible for everyone.
Yeah.
Like every action I do is I'm responsible for everyone around me, and then everyone they interact with, because ultimately, if I am infected or if I do have something, I'm responsible for every person I'm in contact with.
But you bring up a good point though, because talking about like injecting yourself in if like a larger company drops out. So maybe when I was talking the companies that this is going to affect is not so much the small tier, because like you've got your game, especially you've got it out and it's published, and other companies that may have 1 or 2 games that's all that they have, and they maybe not have gotten as big a buzz. This could be, but what's probably going to hurt is like your mid-tier publishers. That, because like the big ones, like we're talking anything Asmodee, they'll have the money probably, and they'll make enough on their giant catalog that they'll probably make enough to be fine. But that mid-tier, I'm trying to think of like the right level game where the people who their company depends on that big launch of their big new game. What was that? What was that, Colin?
Like Queen Games?
Yeah, it could be Queen Games, but I mean they'll have like Essen maybe or something like that. But yeah, some like a company that's really dependent on having like a very huge launch, that may be who gets affected by this the most.
You know, so it's interesting. Most companies, I think, are now looking at online infrastructure. Period. I mean, again, one of those things that sounds obvious, but it's a really interesting dynamic, because brick and mortar stores, game stores, conventions, all that stuff that did not have online infrastructure before, or did not have strong online infrastructure, are now like, all right, how do we do this in this space, and how do we do that fast? And that's tough, because it requires a whole different set of tools, and it requires a whole different set of like, how do you mail things, how do you do packages, all that kind of stuff. It becomes a whole new system to set up, and I think you're going to see a lot of changing dynamics in terms of what companies survive in that and what don't,
right?
Because it is very, like anything else in society, it can be a survival of the fittest situation, which is unfortunate, but that is also, you know, what we're kind of facing in terms of the economics of how games are produced and delivered and so on and so forth. It's also tricky, because games are very much it's you know, they're awesome and they're incredible. They're not an essential piece, right? So it's like, how do you evaluate the importance of this product in regards with everything else? Like, how do you say, okay, this is something that I want to bring to families and people that enjoy games, that kind of thing. You know, is this something they're even going to look at or buy right now? The sheer number of unknowns make companies, I think most companies would rather just wash their hands of everything and stay away for a little while, and step back and wait to see until there's some kind of certainty before they take any kind of gamble, because any kind of risk, such as like even an online convention, can lead to tough financial hurdles they may not be able to move over.
Yeah, that was what we even see, like our I don't know if it's been in the works or if it just they saw the sign, but our local store started really pushing hard their own website that's got all their current inventory.
Oh yeah, online sales.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like people talk about like, I mean, the only thing that bothers me about this whole situation is when I see articles like, there was one, I want to say maybe it was Polygon, that said board games are having a rough time right now. And I'm like, no, just everybody is having, like, these aren't unique problems. Like the current situation. If you want to talk about the overall trend of, well, you know, the distributor model, like if we talk a pre-COVID, the distributor model isn't exactly working as well as it was in the past, and more companies are selling directly to consumers instead of through board game stores and stuff. That's a separate conversation. But if we're talking in a post-COVID world, everything's kind of screwed up right now.
Right. And it will be, I'm sure, for a while longer.
Right. So that's why. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm curious to see if prices of board games are going to increase or decrease, because I feel like there are factors that may lead to both.
Yeah.
I suspect you'll see the average board game price go up as over a while. I think we've seen that trajectory for a while now, but I'm curious if there's going to be more of a spike in terms of getting product out and its value and so on and so forth. Because generally speaking, as the price of these kinds of things go up, you want to make sure, especially if you're a smaller company, it might be harder to produce and sell it. Because generally speaking, the more of you make of a certain product, the cheaper it ends up being to produce. So if you're making 500 copies of a game, the price might be too astronomical and too difficult to actually sell and make some kind of a profit. If you're a larger company and you're selling tens of thousands of a copy, you might be able to still keep that price point within a reasonable range to deliver it and to get it to other people.
I honestly, what I could see more of is I'm gonna use an FFG example. Let's do that. I'm gonna imagine a lot of companies are gonna go the Marvel Champions route for things where the company based on the past couple stories that we've shared and things that you can talk about, Asmodee has been putting tightening the screws on FFG, because you could see large orders of games printings have not been ordered. They were talking about the layoffs. Like, you could almost see the companies just trying to waste as little money as possible. So what that has the result of, like, the first set or the first printing of Marvel Champions sold out almost immediately, and the game had all this big, huge buzz and hype. But the problem is they put the orders in like 3 months before. Like, the orders were going in like as they're announcing it at Gen Con, and then there were some delays getting it out. It comes out, it sells out almost immediately, but there's this buzz. Nobody can really get the games. And then there was this, oh, well, here's our first expansion pack. And now we've got a whole bunch of people, way more than what we were expecting. And we've got people pre-ordering on our website, and those people are getting the game first, and people going to smaller businesses and other places aren't getting it, or maybe we're getting them sent to like Barnes and Noble, people that have paid for huge shipments of our stock, that sort of thing, and then over time adjusting their availability and their structure as we get to that segment of the ordering process. So like the next couple of expansions, again, if COVID hadn't happened, probably wouldn't have had as many problems because they would have been adjusting their estimates. But my point being is that I think you're going to see a lot more people, smaller publishers are going to continue to use Kickstarter, and you're going to see a lot more Kickstarter exclusive games because companies aren't going to want to take the risk of having that extra stock that they're not sure what to do, that they may or may not sell, depending on how the public perception of the game is. They're more likely to do the Kickstarter, and then if they don't have enough buzz, do like a second printing run Kickstarter or a pre-order somewhere else to generate that next run type of thing that you've seen some companies do. Or you're going to see companies doing like pre-order, like Stonemeyer's been doing this. You're going to see a lot more companies using pre-order systems on their websites and limiting their printings of what they print to just outside those pre-orders to limit the amount of risk that they're taking on their money when they're making these games.
So again, I feel like my response to a lot of things in these kind of conversations is I'm not really sure.
Yes,
but I'll say that regarding Kickstarter, because I'm in a lot of communities for publishers and designers, and so I hear a lot of the talk and the concerns and the fears. A couple things that I've noticed as this was going on. Of course, your large funders like Kickstarter, things like that, your platforms for crowdfunding immediately started sending out emails and saying, hey, it's going to be okay. You'll still make money. This isn't limiting how people are gaining funds. And then you start seeing a lot of talk about, well, actually, yes, this is hurting my ability to raise money on Kickstarter. This is, and maybe that's okay in the sense that, like people are investing in things that are really important to them, like food and survival and rent and things like that, like necessities. So I'm not 100% if independent publishers will utilize Kickstarter as much right now, because you are right. You don't want to hold on to a large amount of stock because that gets really difficult. I can say on my end, like I planned on having a convention season this year
Yeah.
and selling games, and that's not happening. So that destroys a roadmap for me that I was like, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And so now you kind of have to reassess that. But even with Kickstarter though, it's like, it's sort of, again, it's not something you can be 100% sure on, because if I'm a self-publisher, maybe it's my first or second game, if I don't have a guaranteed audience, or if I don't have at least 500 individual backers, I'm very likely going to have leftover stock. Most factories will want you to produce a minimum of 500 copies. Anything less than that is going to be very expensive, extraordinarily expensive per unit cost to make the game.
Right.
Or it's just not going to be good, frankly. It's not going to be great. So that's kind of the assessment you have to make. If I'm producing, when I made Composition, I made 1,500 copies because I knew that if I could get it into conventions, it would sell, it would do well. And I'm confident in the game that I made, just like most publishers are of the games that they create. But when you're in that space, it's sort of a different world than when you're online and things like that. Kickstarter for new publishers, generally speaking, backers of Kickstarters, from what a lot of publisher talk I've seen, it's important that you have a dedicated audience. It's important that you have backed other Kickstarters yourself, and it's important that you're a part of the community, the tabletop community. So if you don't meet all of those requirements, you may be looking at Kickstarter right now going, is this worth the risk? Do I want to do this, fail, and then have to restart everything later on? And failing at Kickstarter is not a bad thing, by the way. It can be a really good thing. A lot of Kickstarters that don't do well the first run come back later on and just explode and do very well.
Because they're able to tweak things based on community input.
Right. But right now, they may even be lacking that kind of community input because people just aren't, doing that sort of thing. So there's a lot of really tough questions for independent publishers and publishers in general, and folks that use crowdfunding services like Kickstarter or Indiegogo that don't have a lot of clean answers. I personally think in this environment, the best thing you can do is to try anyway, personally, especially with something like Kickstarter, because failure is not a bad thing, in my opinion. Failure is a stepping stone to success. You have to be willing to take those challenges and work to overcome them. I see some groups doing really cool things, like a certain amount of their Kickstarter funding will go to help support people who need it most during this pandemic, which is incredible in my opinion. So you see a lot of folks that are trying to adapt to the environment in positive ways that help communities.
Yeah, I kept flashing on Meet the Robinsons when you were talking. It was like, you failed. Like, keep moving forward was like the motto.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, and that's Constant. Any other thoughts you want to chime in there? I know we went a little deep specific.
No, I mean, I was enjoying listening. I just had really nothing to contribute. If that makes sense.
To make another movie reference, I'm feeling like the Forrest Gump, when he does the speech on down on the Washington Mall, and he's like, "That's it, man. You said it all. You said it all, man."
Yeah, we're kind of like seamless. This is kind of the territory I was wanting to kind of go. So we'll just kind of keep going down that sort of digging through that rabbit hole. Because the problem is the problems that we're having during this time period is it comes to, you've got people like you, Matthew, that you're not full-time into games, so you might have the luxury that you could still work on things because you've still got, I'm making some assumptions here, another full-time job that's supporting you at this point. But
unfortunately not anymore, but that's
okay. Okay. Maybe I need to backtrack there, but
still accurate to a lot of folks, to be
right. But I'm seeing some that are gaming is their full-time, or was their full-time job, where those people are now not able to work, or you have some that are still trying to press forward, and they're trying to, they may have Kickstarters coming up in the next month or two because they have to, like, they have people that they're paying for, or their own finances may depend on. They need that influx of cash right then and there because that was what they were planning on. So it's just definitely a
Yeah, that could be definitely scary.
yeah.
So I like to talk about this a lot, in regards to previous. So if we look at history, and again, I'm gonna give a botched history lesson here, so
Okay.
I apologize in advance. If you refer to eras such as the Great Depression, there was a bit of a board game renaissance during the Great Depression, right? So you have this item that is a luxury item in an era where people have no money, but people would buy this even choosing it over something like food for in certain instances, because you have this item that you can play with family and friends repeatedly over and over and over and over again forever, which means you always have a source of entertainment that you don't have to put more money into. And it's a game, and something like Monopoly is a game about making money. I talk about this a lot because it's really important to look at the times in terms of what a game can accomplish in an environment. Obviously, things are a bit different now. Now, this is a new golden age of board gaming, and there's very much a cult of the new.
Right.
So you have so many games constantly that it's hard to keep track of them. So games that don't, like something in the past, like Monopoly or Scrabble, that didn't have like a trillion different games that are going against it, like those did very well at the time. Now, I think your staples are going to continue doing very well. Because again, people want something they're comfortable with, that they recognize, that they can probably play with their families, and because really it's kind of hard to play with friends that you're not connected with easily. It's hard to play with people outside of your home environment right now.
Right.
And people are going to be looking for games that are probably replayable to a great degree. And so again, that really sort of taps into, as a publisher, what am I making? How am I fulfilling the needs of my potential audience? And how am I adapting to the environment around me right now?
Yeah, I could see. Thinking ahead a little bit, I would imagine, when we get 6 months down the road, when we look at kind of like, or a year from now, when we're looking at the stats for the year, I would imagine as a whole, the amount of income that the industry bringing in is down, largely because there's some like a huge chunk of it is Magic the Gathering, and most of that is done in stores, which you're not having.
Oh yeah.
But on the flip side, I would imagine that the number of people, there's no way of tracking this, but I would imagine if there were a way of tracking the number of people buying board games, is a whole lot bigger this year than other years, because
you've gotten the non-gamers that are discovering board games,
right,
because there's nothing else to do.
Right. And you got the people, that's where like the stuff in Target and stuff becomes popular, because people are scrambling. It's like, you've seen, how many times have you seen or heard or read on Facebook about people doing puzzles?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah, like the amount of people doing puzzles is like exploding, at least based on the little bit of information and evidence that I have. I imagine if there were a way to quantify that you would see something similar with board games, but I would very much imagine that the total dollars is going to be dramatically lower, because of, like I said, because whether we like it or not, the industry is built on the back of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
She said that was such sadness.
Yeah.
We're sorry, Cindy.
Oh, well, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just agreeing.
No, I know. I'm sorry. I mean, magic doesn't seem that stable. Magic is like this fictional substance, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting really silly.
Oh man. So one thing I'm curious about, because those that have been playing board games, and those of us that have been the existing kind of board game fans that are now having to kind of turn our attention towards places like Tabletop Simulator, how has that impacted you as a designer and someone who's producing games? Have you been using these tools more in kind of playtesting new games, or showing off the game to other, like any media type people, that sort of thing?
Admittedly, I haven't shown my excuse me, my newest game to a lot of media folks. I will say though that the tools available like Tabletop Simulator are things that I'm absolutely taking advantage of. To be perfectly clear, like before this was going on, I love Tabletop Simulator and I did quite a bit of playtesting on it. There is something very advantageous to playing with a group of people from any location very quickly to throw things together and see how it works.
Oh yeah.
It's massive. Generally speaking, what I tell folks with playtesting, and sort of one of the big mantras of playtesting, the goal of playtesting is to cobble together what you want to do as quickly as possible. It doesn't have to look great. You throw it in front of people and you see how it goes. And then you start fine tuning, and then eventually you keep fine tuning and fine tuning and fine tuning. And Tabletop Simulator is really useful for this because you can immediately delete things, edit them, transform them completely. You can flip a table. Like there's a lot of neat stuff that you can do in that would be a little difficult to do in real life. And those are advantages to a designer. So right now, especially for designers who live in rural areas or designers that can't go to local design events such as Break My Game, which is one that I go to pretty regularly in this area, those are important things to consider. So using online resources, that's everything for getting your game out there, for building up attention, and for getting eyes on it and making improvements on it. With local playtesting groups, so you have things like Unpub, and again, what I was aforementioned, Break My Game, which I use. They usually go to Labyrinth Games in DC, or they do the Board and Brew in College Park. Those groups are now, just like everything else, starting to look at online infrastructure and saying, okay, how can we take what we've been doing and move it onto this platform and do it on here and have these groups? Because being able to have someone play test your game in real life is really handy. It's a little bit different than online. For one thing, you're going to get different kinds of feedback. So for example, I'm play testing a game called Sheep right now, which is a hidden role game. And this hidden role game does not have a someone in the center basically organizing everything when things are being done. So there's no like third party outside of the game moving things around and orchestrating everything. This is easy to do on an online platform. It's much harder to get right in real life. So like if there's cards that have to be moved when people's eyes are closed or something like that, then in real life, you're going to find out, okay, people's shoulders are bumping, or players can't reach these cards, or players can't accomplish this thing in this amount of time. Whereas online, you can make this magical curtain fall down to close everybody's eyes, and you can easily click and drag something. So there's a lot of nuances that you have to be aware of as a designer when you're sort of stepping into a platform like Tabletop Simulator. It's very handy, it's very useful, but it does have limitations in terms of what you're going to gain from it.
Right.
You're also going to find that your play testing length might be a little bit longer than it might normally be, and have to account for that.
Playtesting length as in for a specific session or for the life of the design of the game?
So if I'm looking for specific sessions, so if I want my game to be 30 minutes, it might be maybe that playtest like that online, or rather in person, but it might be 45 minutes to an hour and a half online. It might be drastically longer because you're not just playing the game, you're playing Tabletop Simulator, which has its own rules and limitations and mechanics.
Also, depending on how familiar people are with the software.
Yes.
Yeah. I could imagine it would, like you were saying, with the limitations of, especially like a game like yours, the Sheep game, it could take longer for development, I would imagine, because like you were saying, there's that difference of the physical tactileness of the cards and the token moving and stuff with eyes closed that you would have to test in addition to all the mechanics and stuff that you're testing online, right?
Right. So one thing that most designers will come to find and have experienced and explored and recommended to others is playtesting solo. I did this a lot with my first game, Composition. I do this with several games that I'm working on right now. Playing a game by yourself, or even working through it in your head or working through it in paper, like there's a lot of different ways to do that, but that's really going to be the start of your game, is sitting down by solo. Likely. I mean, a lot of designers do collaborative projects or throw it in front of people right away. That's okay. I'm not like saying that's a bad thing, but it's especially in an environment like this, it's very likely a lot of designers are sitting down alone. They have the game set up in front of them and they're just working through it by themselves. And then once they're confident or they feel okay with what that is, then they move that in front of a group. probably on, currently on Tabletop Simulator, or if they have folks at home, maybe in front of family and friends that they're staying with, and they go from there. So it's one of those things where there's a lot in this environment that I don't lose, because you have things like Tabletop Simulator. You still can play test on your own, frankly. You still can trial out ideas. You can still make stuff. None of that is necessarily lost, but you are going to lose that tactile in-person environment with random people. And so I guess it really depends on what stage you're on in playtesting. If you're at a stage where you want to gain feedback live and in person, this might be a little rough. If you're at a stage where you're still tinkering and you're seeing what works and what doesn't work, and you're still making big changes, then doing it online and by yourself can be very useful. If you're at a stage where maybe this is late stage, where you don't want to play the game with other people at all as a designer, you want to put it in front of random people you've never met, that you've never spoken with, and then get their feedback, this again might be a good environment for that right now, because you're able to mail the game to them, or maybe you're able to just set it up on Tabletop Simulator and let random people play it and give you that feedback. So there's a lot of different routes you can take now that might be a little bit different in terms of how you get to that end result you want, but they're still available.
Right. So I have a question, only because my usage of Tabletop Simulator has only been like, I host a private game. Here's the password. Other people log in. That's my limited experience with Tabletop Simulator. Is it what's it like if you just you create a server and just kind of throw it out? Is there like a lobby that people can see all the games that are open and waiting on players?
Generally speaking, there's a couple ways you can go about that. You can upload your game as like a workshop.
Right. So I'm aware of that. I'm asking because of discovery, like how people, like, obviously, if you've already got like a close group of playtesters that you already know, it's easy to get those people like, okay, join my game. But if you're wanting to get like like if you're in the last kind of phase where you're getting that wide variety of playtesters, how would you go about getting a wide variety? Like, is there a way that you can just throw the game on, like host a game and just wait for people to come in kind of thing? Is there that sort of discovery?
Probably not. The discovery feature on Tabletop Simulator for playtesting games probably isn't going to be done through Tabletop Simulator.
Okay.
You're going to find that on online communities, through online design communities, through things like Discord, or again, Twitter, Facebook, that kind of a thing. It would be really tricky to advertise through Tabletop Simulator. I will say, about a month and a half ago, in one of the design groups I'm in, the creator of TTS, or Tabletop Simulator, actually came on and said he wanted to do more for folks that are playtesting games on the platform, because he was aware that that's something that takes place. He's aware that a lot of designers use that platform. So in the future, maybe there's going to be tools where designers and publishers can kind of on that platform say, hey, I'm working on this. But right now, the aforementioned workshop feature where you can upload the materials and folks can download it from Steam is probably something folks are going to be using. They're going to advertise it on their Twitter and media. They're going to link that to people. They might email it to people, say, hey, do this, this, and this. You'll get access to the game. You can always host a server with a password and a username and leave it up, and people can come in, and technically you don't have to interact with them. You could just have yourself on mute and watch them. But I feel like that might be a little less viable than letting folks download the game and setting it up on their own with their own game groups.
Right. So because that's what I was curious about. That's the one piece that might be a little bit difficult when you're relying on something like Tabletop Simulator, is the throwing the getting people's attention, because like you're not going to have something like Unpub or like the Break That Game where you can say, just put up a flag and say, hey, come try my game. You really have to do more work on your end, sort of. It's one of those, like, on the plus side, you now have the availability of, anyone with a computer, but on the downside, it's a lot harder to flag those individual people and get them to pay attention to your singular thing.
Yes, I think that's also why you're going to find a lot. That's also why groups like Break My Game or Unpub are extraordinarily valuable, and I imagine are going to be at the front lines organizing online playtesters and designers. And I think you're going to see a lot more from those kinds of organizations setting things up on an online space.
Right. And by the way, I'll just throw it out here for those that are watching in the chat. If you've got any other questions while we've got someone like Matt on here, feel free to throw them into the chat and we'll talk about them as well. But I also wanted to say, while we're talking about this in table, I do think that one positive outcome that is going to happen on the board game industry is the viability that you're talking about of Tabletop Simulator has become fundamentally apparent to everybody, sort of thing. To whereas ways that you're using that you may have been using it before, other companies are now like, oh, we can do that, and it's, it doesn't cost us next to, like, I'm a part of a board game media and publishers kind of Facebook group, and now all the time I'm seeing things in there that's like, hey, who wants to get on Tabletop Simulator and demo our game? And you didn't see that before. Like, you saw it when it came to convention time, but you didn't see it just randomly through the year. That's like, hey, we've got this game that's about to launch on Kickstarter. Who wants to demo it, this Thursday at blah, blah, blah time, or that sort of thing.
Right. The other thing I wanted to mention, sort of, it's a little away from this, but still useful. So print and plays. Have any of you ever done like a print and play for a publisher by chance?
I've done
Colin has
1 or 2, I think.
Okay, cool. So print and plays are an interesting topic for a lot of designers and publishers. Print and plays, sometimes you'll find free print and plays for games on Kickstarter. You'll see publishers say, we're offering a free print and play so you can trial the game. What we found, I'm not a part of that, but what organizations have found is that a lot of people actually don't download, they don't actually do the print and play. So more often than not, it's a feature that's there to say, hey, this is available. It looks good to have that feature, but it's not a feature that's actually used. One thing, and again, this is me not knowing for sure, I'm curious if we're going to do that more in this environment. I think print and plays are a very useful tool. Obviously, if you have a more complex or larger game, it may impede you from doing that. But if you're in a home environment and you're looking to do something casual, we have seen things. Again, like Cards Against Humanity, I know they offered like a free print and play for their game in general. I know they're pushing that right now. I'm curious to see if other publishers are going to take another shot at using print and plays as a means of.
Asmodee's been experimenting with that.
Yeah, right. I've seen actually lots of print and plays being offered lately,
and I think that's really great. I'm very interested to see what the numbers are in terms of how many folks are actually using those.
Yeah, there's the interesting question.
Yeah,
because if you're somebody like us, we don't have a printer at home, so we can't print and play. But oh well.
Well, and then you get the people like me where, as a general rule, no, I don't do print and plays because I am a very components big.
Good for you.
Yeah, components are a big deal for me. The few times that I've done stuff, it I don't know. But card quality, that sort of thing is important to me. But when you're left with next to nothing, like for instance, they've delayed the Black Widow deck for Marvel Champions, and if FFG came around and said, hey, it's probably going to be July or August before we actually get to send these out because of shutdowns and stuff, but we're going to, if you pay $5, here's the files to print and play it. Now I'm kind of like, well, you can always just like
it's something
print
you already know you love.
That, and it's one of those like the reality of there's not going to be a way of getting that thing in the real world for a while, sort of thing, where it's like I have to put that piece kind of aside if I want to play that content, sort of thing.
Right.
I've been recommending print and plays to a couple publishers who are working on games that aren't yet published as a means of getting their game into playtesters' hands so they can trial them out. One thing that I've found also is that Tabletop Simulator, while it is being used a lot, it is another wall. If you are struggling with income right now, or if you're trying to decide, do I want to buy food or a game, you're probably going to buy food or pay rent or something along those lines. There are applications like Tabletopia, for example, that do have board games hosted on them. And I believe Tabletopia is free. So that's something that is available to folks as well. But again, it's a different system than Tabletop Simulator, different options, different ways of doing things. And it's kind of interesting having different platforms to play board games on, and it does fundamentally change your player experience for board games and your publisher experience as well if you're trying to get the game into the hands of people.
Yeah, Tabletopia is one of those that it's funny. If you look in some of our groups and pages, anytime somebody mentions Tabletop Simulator, I throw in Tabletopia, and somebody might think I was getting like checks or something from them. But the reason I do is because it doesn't always have that paywall like you're talking about with Tabletop Simulator, where there's different levels. So there's like free levels to where if for the most part, as long as one person in the group pays for their like gold premium account, everybody else you're wanting to play with only needs to have a free account. So that's one person paying, I think it's $10 a month, which granted over time that stacks up. But if that one person can afford it, and maybe you've got 3, 4, 5 other people that can't, then now you've got a way that you can still play it. And I know that there's different tiers on the designer side. I don't know what those are, what those include, but those might be ways of doing things to where you can say, oh, I've got this tier and I can put my game up, and now anybody, I just got to send them a link and they can click and play this game. They don't need to pay for anything. That's a big deal, and that's kind of why I do it, because not everybody can afford at this point to get Tabletop Simulator.
Right.
So I always feel it's just important to have the free or next to free options out there, because you never know. Like me earlier when I made an assumption about things and I turned out to be wrong, that sort of situation. So, we've gotten a little deep here. Colin, you want to start getting set up for your game?
Okay, yeah.
So, 1 second. I'm getting questions about the internet at my house, so give me a sec. Just making sure everything's green here.
All right, I am ready. Matt, are you ready?
I was born ready, Colin.
Okay. So before we get to Colin's game show, just want to take a moment to remind everybody to go over to patreon.com/boards and swords, and you can check out the great stuff that we have there. All it takes is $1 a month, and you get to be a part of our community and get access to a bunch of great stuff like our Slack, where we've got a bunch of different conversations going and people suggesting news pieces for me to put into the news. And not to mention, we've started today, actually, as we're recording this, the first episode of our the rest of our top 50 list. So the last episode, 147 of Boards and Swords, we talked about our top 10 games of all time. Well, what about the other 40 games on our list? Well, we've been recording those, and we're releasing them only to our Patreon members as special bonuses and thank yous to them. So if you want to hear about those games, the first episode of that went up today, and I don't know yet how we're going to be breaking, if it's going to be a weekly or what. But the rest of the other ones are coming. We've got a couple recorded already, but you're only going to get those if you go become a patron for at least $1 a month over at patreon.com/boards and swords. And now I'm going to flip it over to Colin.
Okay, so I did this one game show type thing a while back, but I wanted to give it another try. I am going with a theme this time. We are doing wrong categories, which I have given everyone a list from categories. Everyone has a different list.
Ooh, fun.
And given each of them, they all have the same letter. So they fill out the list.
Oh, we all have the same letter.
Yeah, they fill out the list, and I got thrown off now.
Sorry.
They fill out the list, and now I'm going to ask questions that deal with something that's totally unrelated to categories, and they are going to pick an item from their list to fill in the blank and try to pitch it as the answer to that question. and I'll pick which one I like best and award a point to whoever I like.
So,
And
No, we have no way of
Cindy all
tracking
the
our
time.
points. No, I doubt that.
I mean, she's the easiest one to give points to. She's right here.
Yeah.
And I imagine you like her the most.
Well, Matt, you're getting close.
I mean,
You
I have
kind of a
I have the
bromance.
coins here.
All right.
Yeah, so Chris, you could just
Chris is
disperse
going
the
to divvy
coins
out points for everyone.
Sweet. I'm going to get all of these, and Cindy and Matt can each get 1 point.
All right. Okay, so I'm. Does everyone understand the rules of what's going on?
No.
Yes.
All right, close enough. All right, so I'm going to set the stage. The world has fallen into waste, much like in the movie The Postman, if anyone remembers that movie. We're part of a newer civilization, and I want to tell our history of how we came to be. That said, I'm having trouble recalling important bits of our very rich history. Now, first thing I want to say, this land has been good to us. It used to be known to the ancients as Boards and Swordsington, but we decided to change the name to better suit our people. What did we decide to call our land? That's what I want to know. I'll go to, let's start with Matt first, the guest.
We decided to call our land root beer. Called it root beer.
Why was that? I can't remember that.
Well, you know, part of it was just we were trying to get back to our roots, really just trying to find where we were. And we also recognized that we needed something that the folks could look at and find enjoyment in, keep people feeling easy in this very dark time. And we recognized that beer was one of those things that kind of, keeps the masses in check. You know what I'm saying? So all those things together kind of just, it brought a name together. It's a little cynical, but, nobody has to know. And overall, I think, like I said, it brings forth where we come from.
All right. So root beer. Chris, what do you have for?
Okay.
What do you remember the name being?
So hear me out. All right. Anytime that you have one of these stories, the civilization always has like a name like sanctuary or like it's like a feeling that gives you like peace and something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you got this. You've been through this wasteland, this apocalypse, and so we have a name that kind of brings peace. So, but the problem is that our spelling has gotten a little rough over the past couple of over the years. So we've named our town Rolaids because ROLAIDS spells relief.
Oh my gosh.
I like that.
Oh my
All
gosh.
right, all right.
Well, hey, Rolaids do give you relief, so there you go.
No, that's from the commercials they used to have.
Oh. Apparently, I've never seen those commercials.
or heard them. I can't remember. All right, so Cindy, over to you. What do you remember the name being of this great land?
Rockets. The name of this great land is Rockets because we are rocketing through the hard times to become a thriving civilization again.
Okay. All right, so we have Rockets, Rolaids, and root beer. I am going to have to go with the bad spelling of Rolaids.
Yay!
Spelling relief. So yeah,
these are all 1
fact,
point, right?
Yeah. The last one I think will be 2 points. I haven't decided yet.
Depends on what the points are.
Yeah. So fun fact about the land of Rolaids: it stretched from one pond to the next and had only the finest cereals on its grocery store shelves. What?
Are you serious? This
No.
Are you cereal?
I'm talking about my totally not made up land of Rolaids here. So let's listen to these fun facts that I did not make up.
Oh man.
All right. So Every great land has a great ruler, and I'd say that we've had the best. Can anyone remind me of what our ruler's name was, though? Let's go to Cindy first this time.
Does cereal mean anything in this question?
It means nothing.
Why did you say it?
It's fun facts.
I hate you.
I'm all about the fun facts.
So we're naming the ruler.
Yes.
The ruler's name is Ruler.
I knew I should have picked a different one. Okay.
By the way, I'm just going down my list
how
here.
much
Is that okay?
more obvious can you get with
You
ruler?
what?
I'm just going down my list. Is that what we're doing? Do I have that accurate?
No, you pick whatever you want from your list.
Uh-oh. Challenge mode. I'm going down the list.
If you could sell it, do it.
Yeah, the ruler's name is Ruler because I literally have ruler written on my list.
Well, it's fitting. It's fitting to the role. He was born into it, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Can I go next?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
I don't know. The ruler's name, and I apologize, Cindy. The ruler's name is actually Robot Factory After Party.
What?
First name Robot, middle name Factory, third name After Party. That's his full name.
All right then.
Yeah, he actually gave himself that name. He did not like his original name, so he changed his name at 18 as soon as he became a legal adult. His parents were not happy, but neither was he because he lost a bet. So that's just how it goes.
Oh my gosh.
So, Robot Factory After Party.
All right, my turn.
It's over to Chris.
All right, you're all wrong because what are the key qualities you need to have in a leader? You need someone with charisma, someone with gumption. You need someone that can inform the people. And that's why our ruler was a guy who, would regularly inform the people. He would have daily sessions where he would sit down and talk with the people and tell them about it. And most importantly, he would make sure that those people stayed classy. That's right. Our ruler was Ron Burgundy.
Oh, I was the only one that thought it was funny. Okay.
I don't know Anchorman.
Ron Burgundy?
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Okay, so we have Ruler, Robot Factory After Party, and Ron Burgundy. I think I'm gonna have to go with the sort of stereotyping breeding into minds the name. So I'm gonna pick Ruler.
Oh wow.
Lame.
Nice.
Darn.
Yep. Ruler is the name of our ruler. And Ruler ruled in such a great ways, creating jobs, fighting off invaders, and still finding time to have afternoon tea.
What does that say about our
All
language that we only know that our ruler was named Ruler and Rolade spells relief?
Well, I'm just going to skip past that into the next question. So there was a great war that lasted for 78 years.
Whoa.
Fists were thrown, rocks were hurled, and mics were dropped. What was our land name? Oh, yeah, Rolades, yeah. So Rolades finally conquered all foes once they harnessed the power of the almighty... Oh, what was it? What do they harness the power of to defeat their foes? Let's go to Chris first this time.
Clearly it was River Tam because she's a badass and got rid of all of our foes.
Well, yeah.
Well, I have a hard time arguing with that. Yeah. You didn't even have to sell that. That's just like as soon as it said the name, it's like, oh, right, of course. Yeah. Let's go to Matt.
Hello?
I think that's his answer.
The sound broke into the atmosphere. crushing the ears of all enemies.
Oh my
A
god.
piercing wail, a siren shriek. No one could survive
I think we
that
both
noise.
So, so we're doing like an onomatopoeia.
No. It's that's how it's pronounced.
May I ask what that was an answer to on your list?
That was an answer to Cars. An answer to Cars.
That's a good one.
Okay, all right. And Cindy, what do you have?
So, what was the question again?
What did we harness the power of to
Oh,
defeat our enemies?
Rice-a-roni.
Rice-a-roni.
Yes, we
Cooked?
harvested
Cooked or uncooked?
both because uncooked, they're little daggers that they just shot with slingshots into the hearts of the enemies.
It is the
But
San
cooked-
Francisco treat.
Yes, but when it was cooked, they cooked so much of it that the weight of all the rice just squashed the enemy rivals.
So they cooked it over top of the enemy rivals.
No, they cooked it normally, and then they put it into
They catapulted it?
yes, catapults. They put it into catapults and shot it, and it was just so moist and heavy that it just suffocated them.
Moist. I thought you were going to say like they had some cooked and some uncooked, and the enemies were just like, oh I got another uncooked one.
Well, I mean, that would have been better. Thank you for ruining my explanation.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Okay. So we got rice-a-roni, and river tam. I have to go with river tam on this
Yeah,
one.
you
Woohoo!
do.
Oh
There's-
my
there's-
goodness.
There's no getting around it.
Well, that's because you have to know that Colin's a huge Firefly fan.
Slight pandering there.
Mm.
All right, so this great war started all because of greed. Our mascot was stolen from within the sacred chambers.
Oh no.
Now I'm having trouble remembering what our great mascot was, though. Cindy, let's go to you first, since you have an idea, it seems.
The Rugrats.
So not one, but multiple mascots.
All of the Rugrats. Tommy, Angelica, Chucky, all the twins. I can't.
Lil and Phil.
Yeah, them. Yeah, the Rugrats.
Nice. Okay, let's all right, yeah. Let's go to Chris. Chris, what do you
So our mascot, is that what we're talking about?
got? Yep.
Our mascot was a bunch of rocks that had been in a rock tumbler, because just like symbolizing how we've been tumbled over time and come out smoother on the other side, these rocks have gone and had the rough, hard edges worn off and are better having gone through said rock tumbler.
Symbolism.
Lame.
I dig. All right, Matt, what do you have? What was
Well,
the mascot?
Actually, it works out pretty well. The mascot was the same creature that made the sound, Rusty Chicken.
What?
Rusty Chicken was the mascot.
How did you get that?
Well, on categories, the number 4 listing was spices and herbs.
Oh my gosh. You're ridiculous.
A rusty chicken. I can picture that probably the best, so I'm going to pick Rusty Chicken as our
All
mascot.
right! Oh, yes! Depositing that in the point bank tonight while maintaining social distance.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so after this war, our great ruler built a wall to protect the mascot from ever being stolen again. It's made of a never before used building material known as what? What was this amazing building material? Let's go to Matt first.
The amazing building material was actually rubber band chewing. So similar to gum, people would chew rubber bands, creating this absurd elastic material that would actually be able to stretch for miles and miles just because they chewed it for so long. It enhanced the elasticity. Basically, it lets you build buildings, bridges, anything you can think of. Incredible stuff.
No. I'm a terrible host for this game. Like, I don't know why I pick it because I just laugh at everything.
That's true.
All right, rubber band chewing. Okay. Cindy, what do you have? What was the building material?
Rhinoceros beetles.
Okay.
Because it's not really a wall so much as a defense moat type mechanism. Because you don't want to cross a rhinoceros beetle because those things will hurt you.
I wasn't sure if it was like a living structure.
Oh, what?
But I guess it kind of is.
Yeah, it is a living structure. They're alive.
You know, people like, build walls out of plants that grow. So they call that like a living structure. And I thought you were like, you made a wall of beetles. And so you just, the ground is moving.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
I like the moat. Well,
it's just, it's just they have like this circle of tons and tons and tons of rhinoceros beetles protecting our mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to cross a rhinoceros beetle because those things are brutal.
Yeah. I get that. I haven't had a close encounter with one, but I've seen them.
They're creepy.
And Chris, what do you have?
So Cindy was right. It wasn't a wall per se, and the fact is that the defense of our mascot was left to one person, a very somewhat would say ordinary looking person, in a nice suit with his hands crossed, but he would always have would drive people crazy whenever people would attempt to try and steal it, and that's because that man was Rod Serling. Creator of the Twilight Zone, because anytime anyone would get close, he would be like, consider yourself in a world where the laws of space and time are no longer yours to command. And he would just start rambling, and then weird things would start happening, and people would go crazy and run away screaming.
I get it. I get it. Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah, no. Sorry.
No, that's it. That was it.
Woo-hoo!
It was Rod Serling.
Not my rhinoceros.
No, I remember now. It's clear as day. Rod Serling, yeah. He defended it with grace and honor. And he's now considered an official building material. All right, so the new building material wasn't the only discovery of this great land. Scientists were inspired to research into all fields of study. This led them to the new source of energy, which was infinite and pure. What was this energy source? Let's go over to Cindy. What is the source of energy in this new civilization?
Rays, like stingrays.
Oh.
Because it's like a aqua powering of sorts, where they just swim around and it powers everything, like their movement.
Okay, so they're creating currents.
Yes, they're creating currents, and then we're harnessing the current from the flapping of the wings on the stingrays, and so it's just powering.
Okay,
and it's so majestic and wonderful to watch.
Majestic energy source.
Absolutely.
Okay, Chris, what do you have?
The energy source was Red Robin, because we found out that you could generate power based off of fries, and Red Robin has bottomless fries, so you have bottomless energy. So, boom.
Yum.
Oh man, that is kind of hard to argue that logic. Matt, what do you have?
Stingrays reproduce, Colin, so you have endless amounts of them as well.
I have down here, let me open up my notes real quick. I actually don't have any notes to open up. I'm sorry. I lied there. It's really smelly cologne.
Oh my God.
Is the energy source that I have here. Really smelly cologne. is the pure energy source that they use.
Care to elaborate? Like,
I don't want to elaborate anymore. This stuff stinks, man. Let's just move on. It's bad. Like there's a waft. Let me just say that. You don't want to whiff of this.
Ew.
I with people out there that would know me know that I always have to get a second thing of fries and sometimes even a third at Red Robin. So Red Robin wins the point.
You suck.
I'm sorry. Chris just remembers our history better.
I honestly didn't know that I've forgotten about that.
He's talking about the history of our city.
Yes, the history of our civilization.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was talking. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so last question. What's our point total? I think Chris is like.
I'm at 4, and then the other ones are at 1.
I have 65 here. I don't know if anyone wants to double check the math.
All right, so this is going to be worth 4 points. Yeah, okay, look at that. I wrote that down before the thing started.
Oh, is this the last one?
Yes.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to change my answer off the course then. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so this one you're actually going to be picking 2 answers. All right, so because of this new power source being as infinite as it was, the bottomless fries, a new law was put into place so that no one person should be found to be holding something while in a something. Okay, you cannot be holding something while in something else. And let's go over to Chris.
All right. Cannot be holding something while you're in something else.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem, because of the energy source, you can't be holding a rocket launcher while you're inside a raspberry, because if it goes off, then the raspberry will explode and get raspberry all over the bottomless fries, and everyone knows that's gross.
Oh yeah, you don't want that. I mean, some weird people might like that, but yeah, not me. And I'm the one judging it here. Okay, so rocket launcher while you're in a raspberry. I can understand that logic. I have to consider the other options because I'm still fuzzy. Like, hey Matt, how about a 20? You can unfuzzify my memory.
I got you. Okay, so here's the deal. Obviously, this is a whole new world, a lot of crazy stuff going on. One of the unfortunate side effects of this new world is that there has been a number of clones of Richard Nixon that have come from the earth. It's really messed up. It's a tough life. One of the things that we recommend you never hold, ever, is Richard Nixon while you're inside of rural Kansas.
Rural Kansas.
Rural Kansas. It's bad. Let me tell you. Have you ever held Richard Nixon? That's bad enough. In rural Kansas, end times. No amount of energy would be able to protect us.
Matt sucks because he didn't steal my answers, but it's basically the exact same thing.
Rural Kansas.
What is yours?
You can't hold Ronald Reagan while you're in Rochester. I'm not even kidding. It was a president and a place in the United States.
All right.
Because my justification, though, was that it was going to be like Ronald Reagan was like this hero for his movies. Not because he was president, but because he was an actor. Everybody in the civilization just loved his movies. So they've created millions of bobbleheads of Ronald Reagan. And unfortunately, in Rochester, because, we had to rename one of our cities after the infamous city of Rochester because
infamous,
why not?
Yeah.
Why not? But in Rochester, bobbleheads are strictly illegal because of the beheading of Ronald Reagan. I don't know. That was stupid.
So oddly
no,
enough,
you are not.
Up until that last little bobblehead thing, I was leaning toward the rocket launcher and the raspberry because it made sense with the fry thing. But so I have here written the penalty if you are found to be breaking this law, and as anyone found doing it would be sentenced to 1 year of constant dancing to Justin Timberlake's "Can't Stop the Feeling." And given that the punishment should fit the crime, I think it's holding a Ronald Reagan in Rochester, the Rochester district of Rolaids. So I'm going to give these 4 points to Cindy.
Boo. Rigged.
Darn.
Rigged.
Shut up.
Here, we can say it was 3 points, so we have 2 winners.
Good game.
That's not
I wrote that down. I said, no, wait, not 4, 3. Yeah.
Whatever.
So that's it. We have everyone's a winner except the guest.
I'll take it.
I was appreciative of your answers, though. It was the specifically.
that was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
All right. As soon as I pick up this coin that I dropped in the floor. All right. Colin, I do believe it's time to roll that beautiful bean footage. That wraps up this week's episode. Remember, if you want to watch live, we record every other Wednesday. Boardsandswords.com/live has the schedule and the links where you can find all our live streaming channels. If you like it, you also need to check out boardsandswords.com to see our other show, The Dirtbags Are Holding. It's going to come back at some point. We're all just, given the environment, a lot of our creativity is kind of stunted, trying to come up with some game ideas. So at some point, Dirtbags Are Holding will be back, and that's where we play RPGs in the worst way possible.
But if you like this show, you can email us your comments and questions at feedback@boardsandswords.com. And you can follow us on Instagram at Boards and Swords Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Boards and Swords Pod. And you can follow our individual accounts. I'm Cindy Pastorius on Twitter and Instagram.
I am ColdCakes196 on Twitter and Instagram.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Chris the Prof. And Matt, you can say something.
Oh, cool. You can find me on twitter.com/CoolGamesMatt or on Facebook at CoolGamesOfficial. Please check out Composition. It's in stores, sort of, and available online.
That was COO Games Matt.
Yes, COO Games Matt, MATT.
And we are also a part of the Dice Tower Network. You can go to dicetowernetwork.com and check out a whole array of board gaming related podcasts. And the network is helped out a lot by Cool Stuff Inc. CoolStuffInc.com. You can go there and check out all kinds of gaming deals they have on board games and game related materials. And they have sales all the time sales at CoolStuffInc.com.
That's right. And once again, remember to check out patreon.com/boardsandswords to help support the show. But just listening to this episode alone is enough to say thank you so much for your support. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. In the meantime, remember that every gamer has a story. And for this episode, it was how many different commercial things did I throw into this episode? Because there were a lot.
There were a lot.
Yeah. Also, before Colin can leave this bit in, before we go, Matt, I should have given you the opportunity to describe your game and let people know where they can get it.
Sure. I'll take that moment then. My game is called Composition, a cacophony of words. It is a word-building card drafting game. Players take the role of one of 11 unique maestros. Each of those maestros has a set of letters that represents the word they start with. They're able to use those letters throughout the game permanently. They'll create performances, or words that you spell, to earn roses, awards, and ovations. And occasionally we'll have to dodge terrible tomatoes thrown by the audience for your performances. The game plays anywhere between 2 to 5 players. It does have a solo mode if you're looking for something to just play on your own. Like I said, it is a word building game, so that meets your fancy. I definitely recommend it. It is on sale now at CooGames, COOGAMES.net. The website does not look great yet. As we discussed earlier, online infrastructure is something we're all working on, but you can purchase it there.
Cool.
So-
Yeah, we played it. It's really cute. Best looking word game I've played.
The artwork
it's
looks
very
great.
nice.
I've seen it, so I have not played it, but I've seen it, and it looks great.
Becky Titus did the graphic design. Olivia Rom did the character art, and they're both fantastic at what they do.
By the way, you should definitely, if it's not already bought, you should buy the domain coostuffinc.com. Because you might, even though it's funny
That
on
would be
its,
cool.
it's funny on its own. You might get the occasional person to drop by your website just from not putting the L in there, the typos. You know, like sometimes
True.
people put an extra O in Google or something.
You know, I really wanted to buy coup.games, but a .games domain is like
Oh, yeah,
$300
it's expensive.
a year or something like that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
And Colin, you should probably clip that bit and put it where we introduced him, where he was talking about his game. That way,
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
because
Yeah.
that way the people on the stream may have heard it if they didn't tune out in time, and that way we shouldn't have it at the end in case people switch to a different episode. It should be at the beginning.
Yep. I was immediately thinking about that.
Cool.
Director.
I'll probably just cut out the line where, as we discussed earlier,
Yes.
or I'll overdub it. It's like in the future.
Yeah.
I had a great time being on the show with y'all.
Yay.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you were coming. You were able to come on.
Definitely.
Come on.
Yeah, you're definitely going to want to use the individual different things
Definitely
because
a fun time.
there was a lot of roboting happening over here on this side. So you're definitely going to want to use
Yeah,
the
there
individual.
was
Do you want me to stop recording?
Yeah, you can.
And
yeah,
send the track?
I'm gonna stop recording.
Yep, I've
right
already
now.
stopped, and I am stopping the... Good night, everybody.